Okay, one of the final questions I have for you is, do you think the new generations of gamers will have any interest in games like old school RuneScape? Is old school RuneScape did RuneScape in general just land at the perfect time in history to just gather a ton of players? Do you think there will ever be a new influx of players, or do you think they're all gonna rally around Fortnite and other
Oh,
games
there'll
like
be a
that?
load of players. I mean, the RuneScape, I've spoken about this at length on some RuneScape documentaries.
Hmm.
The strength of RuneScape was the fact that it didn't require a download, which means you could play it
Mm.
through Java on school PCs, library PCs, public PCs, PCs that stopped you downloading and running .exe files. You could play RuneScape on them still. It was incredibly lightweight and it kind of came at the right time. The amount of people playing video games has increased substantially. It is no longer a niche hobby. It is now the world's most popular hobby, literally the opposite of niche. This does mean that more people will find MMORPGs. The problem is that when you look at the data, it's a lower percentage of overall players. It's the old it's a fallacy almost. It's the idea, you've seen the picture of the plane that came back with the bullet holes on the wings, and the idea of, where do we armor the
Oh
plane
yeah,
up?
yeah.
Well, you want to put the armor on the places where the bullet holes aren't, because that's where the plane didn't come back from.
Yep, yep.
So let's say that you had, I'm going to use very basic, simple numbers here because I'm a basic, simple man. Let's say you had 1,000 people who play video games. This was, 30 to 40 years ago. 1,000 people play video games. In order to do that, you need access to a PC because consoles don't yet exist. You don't have a mobile phone. I mean, consoles, even if they did, you're looking at things like the Sega Saturn, you're looking at things like the Sega Master System. It's the Atari. It's not going to be powerful stuff. So you had a group of players who are playing on PC. They all have relatively similar interests. Lord of the Rings are still pretty big. Fantasy, sci-fi, that kind of stuff. That kind of more fantastical, mythical world. So you had a smaller subset of a potential player base, but they were also very enfranchised into their game. That's when games like Ultima Online and EverQuest would capture their player base. EverQuest never reached 20 or 30 million players, but it had a relatively big percentage share of the overall gaming space. Then you had games like World of Warcraft come along, games like Elder Scrolls Online, and then gaming absolutely took off with the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 3, the Xbox 360. You had PC gaming becoming almost affordable, with graphics cards being dumped once crypto people realized the entire thing was a terrible idea. And now you have just millions of players all over the world discovering games. So when someone turns around, and I have said that the MMORPG is not as popular, the entire genre is not as popular as people think it is, but it still has a hell of a lot of players because there are simply more people playing games. People want the experience that RuneScape offers, and they will likely find it. Someone will turn around and say, yeah, but MMOs only account for 5% of the global player base of video games. I mean, yeah, but 5% of a massive number is still more than 50% of a smaller number, as long as the maths works out. People will discover RuneScape. People will discover World of Warcraft. People will discover the Elder Scrolls Online. These games will keep going because they offer an experience that people want. It is a very human experience. It is a classic fantasy game with the ability to play with your friends, to log on, to hop worlds. The fact that you can hop worlds freely in RuneScape, people don't understand, is a massive thing for the social aspect, the cultural aspect. When I first played World of Warcraft and my friend said, hey, you're not on my world, I kind of looked at him and I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean I'm not on your world? I've played RuneScape. You can just hop worlds easily. And then I realized, no, you can't. This is not a design that every game has. People will continue to discover MMORPGs. They will continue to grow. They will continue to exist because it doesn't need to have millions of players. They just need to have tens of thousands, maybe a few 100,000, and a community that keeps it going. EverQuest, the original EverQuest, is still online. It put out its 31st expansion. It is still going. It is still paid for. It still has a community. Ultima Online is still going. There are still MUDs running. One of the worst things in the MMORPG landscape, one of the secrets of this industry that no one knows and nobody should know, is that the oldest still running MMORPG is a furry roleplay game called Furcadia. That's a secret you can keep. Nobody needs to know this. It's a horrible secret from our industry. And I understand that people are going to listen to the podcast. You have the knowledge now. You can keep that. It's a secret. It's on Wikipedia. It's awful. But people will discover RuneScape. People will discover all these MMOs. And as long as they discover an experience that another game is not giving them, then they'll stay around. Yes, more people will discover Fortnite. More people will discover Roblox. More people will discover Genshin Impact. But just because something's not super popular doesn't mean it won't have a hardcore franchise of players that stay there. My favorite musical is a steampunk musical called The Dolls of New Albion. Some of my favorite films no one's ever heard of. Some of my favorite TV shows, small and niche. Favorite bands, favorite music, favorite art from different artists. You don't need to follow the mainstream and the super popular. You just need enough to survive. And I think RuneScape will always have enough to survive.